Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program Capital Beat. 1992 batch IPS officer Jasvir Singh has been relieved of his service by the Yogi government. He was under suspension for the last 5 years. He was the one who had tried to book Yogi under National Securities Act. He also questioned Yogi's encounter policy. Now, was this a harsh punishment given to Jasvir Singh? And what does one say about the policy of compulsory retirement? What does it do to the policing system? Joining me now is a very special guest, former IPS officer Yashovardhan Azad, and who has also been the former special director of the Intelligence Bureau. He's been the secretary of the securities to the government of India. He's been the Central Information Commissioner, and currently he's the co-founder of a think tank called Deep Strat. Thank you so much, Mr. Azad, for joining. And your first thoughts on this compulsively, who is the IPS officer who's been made to retire. He was already under suspension for last 5 years. And if he was made to retire, what would you really say to this development?
Well, the government has a right to compulsory retire an All India service officer. And this provision has been utilized even earlier. But as you have questioned, in the case of Jasvir Singh, does it have other overtones? Well, one can say that he was in a very non-significant post, that is ADG manual and rules in 2019 when he was suspended. And he was suspended because he gave an interview to Huffington Post in which he talked about a lot of things. He said he had no work. Well, it went against the government policy. He did cross the line because you are not supposed to give interviews. And obviously in service, you cannot criticize the government. I mean, these are the rules which are imposed on any officer. So in that respect, he was suspended. But yes, I think the suspension went on too long. It was for 5 years or 2.5 years, I'm not sure. And he had gone, and another charge was slapped on him that he went on leave without asking. And finally, he was retired. So yes, it does look as if it was a kind of premeditated action against him. In that respect, I would say, though the government has the authority, but in this case, it does appear that the action was a little too harsh.
But given the fact that he did not have a single corruption case against him, the only thing was the indiscipline that he had given an interview to Huffington Post. Then he went leave without informing. Then he also questioned Yogi Adityanath's encounter policy. Now, does it go to show that this officer was too upright in the sense that he wasn't indulging in any sort of corrupt practice, and then he questioned the powers to be? So was that the reason that he had to face this kind of a consequence?
Well, Jasvir Singh, I know him. I think in fact he had rung me up once asking for security, and I had checked his profile. Yes, he's an honest officer, and he had taken on a lot of important people during his career. I think he had arrested Raja Bhaiya for one of the food scams when he was in some government in early 2003 or something, when he was SP Pratapgarh during Mayawati's regime. And he had also recommended NSA against the present chief minister at one time, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So yes, he does carry a kind of a baggage with him, and the tag of being an extremely straightforward and an honest officer. But unfortunately, today, nobody cares for such people. There's hardly any media which is taking interest, except perhaps you, who stand up or even speak in the case of honest officers. And so I think I would still maintain that the decision was very harsh. In any case, the present government didn't want to have anything to do with him. That's why they had given a post like ADG manual rules or something. And in fact, after suspension, when he came back, again he wanted to arrest 5 or 6, was it IS officers or something, in some corruption case in which they were earlier named. So in that respect, yes, Jasvir was certainly not the favorite of this government. And I can also say that if you really want to, the idea of giving the power of compulsory retirement with the state government was that people who don't do anything, who are not performing, they are the ones who should be compulsorily retired. And I would say, in that respect, if you really look at it really effectively, about 60% of the people should be retired who are in the IAS or the IPS, because I don't know what they are bringing to the table. But definitely, they are all right. If you don't do anything, you're not noticed. But if you do something, you're
Right.
certainly noticed. And yes, Jasveer did a lot to get noticed.
But Mr. Azad, do you think that this was, as what you said, that this was a tool which was used as a yardstick, to shunt out the non-performing officers? But many IPS officers from UP have been off the record saying that this has often been used as a vengeance tool during the Yogi regime. Do you think that this is being used as a vengeance tool also, to take revenge or to shunt out, unnecessarily shunting out officers if you don't like them or if they don't toe the government's line?
Well, they certainly, these officers who are retired certainly have the option to go to the court. But that, if there's a mala fide reason behind it, they can certainly appeal against. Now, I don't know about the other officers, but I certainly know about Jasveer, because Jasveer is a brave officer. I mean, according to me, he's very, very brave. And I believe Amitabh Thakur has written to the Prime Minister also that he should be reinstated. I mean, I totally support that. In that respect, I would say that such people who have the guts to take on the mighty should be there in the services. In fact, the whole idea of All India services was that they should have the functional autonomy to perform against corruption, to perform against misdeeds, to perform against any acts which is contrary to the law or the constitution. But who cares? I mean, as you see, I have been, tweeting all this while in support of such cases, and I've been also talking about it. But there is hardly any response. It is expected that the officers toe the line, and very happily everyone toes the line. I'm sure the chief secretary or the home secretary or the DGP would not have uttered a word. They would have just gone by the way. So if the top people are not protesting and they are very comfortable with it, I suppose nothing can be done. I don't know whether the UP media has also reported this. I don't know whether even the opposition cares, for that matter,
Absolutely.
because whenever they come into power, they perhaps expect the same kind of obeisance.
Right. But Mr. Azad, what does it do to the policing system if you have a system where honest, upright, and forthright officers, they are forced into retirement or they are shunted out, not given good promotions? Though it's a very cliched thing, and I don't know how many times it has been projected in the Bollywood films and elsewhere as well, that you need to be corrupt to survive in a system like this. But then at the end of the day, you have examples like Jasveer, you have examples like Amitabh Thakur. What would one say? I mean, what is the kind of impact it has on the policing system?
Well, number one, it cracks the morale of the services. But looking at the scheme of things right now, most of the people appear to be happy. And that's why I would say that in the present system in the country, and that's not only particular to this government, this is perhaps irrespective of the governments, that most of the, all India service officers prefer to be non-performers. And if you're not performing, if you're not doing anything except pushing files, nobody notices you, and you go up the rung of the ladder very, very peacefully. And so most of the people become secretaries or DGP. I would say that if 100 people are recruited every year, say within the IPS or the IS, hardly 5 to 7% are the ones who really remain or perform as true leaders and who can be posted as the chiefs, like the DGP or chief secretaries. But everyone goes up the rung ladder. I don't know whether corruption is another issue. But as long as you're bent, as long as you perform as per the requirement of the government, it's fine. Today, there's another very serious issue related to what you have asked. What happens to the morale? The morale really relates to those people who are acting as functional chiefs. For example, morale will relate to a superintendent of police or a collector, or to a DIG or to a commissioner who's holding charge of a zone or a particular swath of territory. These are the people, head of CID, head of economic offences wing. And yes, they will be under tremendous pressure because they realize, first of all, you cannot take any action against the ruling party members no matter what happens. But that exactly is there even as far as the ED goes or the CBI goes. Somehow it has become an unwritten rule that you cannot. So which means you don't have a functional autonomy. If you don't have a functional autonomy, then how do you function? So one, a compulsory retirement of this kind clearly shows that if you're on the wrong side of the government is wrong. You have to go absolutely according to the charter given to you. It's a sad thing. It's a sad thing. I'm not saying that still there are not honest officers. There are very good officers still in the system. But maybe for some reason or the other, they haven't come into clash with the government on issue of principles or something. In this case, I think, yes, it's a sad thing. He shouldn't have been dismissed.
No, but isn't this so unfortunate that the system which prevails, it breeds mediocrity within the police officers? They prefer, as what you said, they prefer to be non-performers and just signing files, not taking up good leadership roles. Uh, what kind of officers will the future of the country have then? I'm just wondering. I mean, people are just going to passively sign the files, move up the ladder, and retire. Is that what the police officers of the country will be, and is that what the future is looking at?
Well, somehow there is a kind of an impression that people who are who are outstanding, who are outspoken, and who are true leaders, it is expected that they will be shunted or superseded, and they will not get their due, and they are called impractical by the other officers. They are called impractical, too blunt, too straightforward. And whereas the others, they are very soft spoken, they're very polite, they are very well dressed, they speak good English, they write good notes, and do nothing, basically good for nothing. They perform very well. They look so good with their families. They quietly going about their ways. They love to stand behind the ministers, sort of behaving like chaprasis, and it's a great thing. I mean, so, well, I suppose. But the other thing is also that it reflects upon the ecosystem of our society. That's exactly what our media is. That's exactly how our the society is. No Jholawala is talking about, intellectual is talking about this. No opposition is talking about this. No media giant is talking about it. Even they are also fallen under pressure. So if the ecosystem is like that, nobody is carrying a word except a few journalists like you, then yes, this is the system we are breeding, and we'll suffer for it.
But what would you really say to this policy of compulsory retirement? Should it be done away with? And should there not be a natural process where police officers retire? What is this whole thing about compulsory retirement, which is now being misused in a way against honest officers?
You see, the rule is good that there
Okay.
should be compulsory retirement for non-performers. But if it used wrongly, what do you do? There are so many good laws. Laws are basically good. They stand for good things. But policeman is supposed to stand by the law, not by a particular government. But if the same law is misused, what can you do? I mean, it's like throwing the baby with the bath tub or bath water, whatever you say. So compulsory retirement was an excellent tool because most of the non-performers can be weeded out, but nobody was being weeded out. And if you're weeding it out against people who are speaking the truth, or then it's unfortunate. That's all I can say.
But can we, I mean, are we in a position to say outrightly that Jasvir Singh paid a price because he had the audacity to stand up against the Yogi government? He questioned his encounter policy. Then he tried to book Yogi under NSA. And that's why he has to face this consequence.
Well, apparently, I mean, from the things that, as you say, this could be a kind of a circumstantial evidence that yes, the man was not found to be useful enough because he had crossed paths with the government earlier also, and one of the very important government's ministers, which he is even now, I think, that cost him his job. That one can say certainly, because otherwise there are so many who are not performing at all, who should be weeded out. But in this case, he was not allowed to perform. So there is a slight difference between the two. And it's sad. I mean, I support Amitabh Mathur's letter to the Prime Minister that he should be reinstated.
The kind of Cold War which is known between Yogi and Prime Minister's office, do you think that there could be a miracle? And if the letter has been written to the Prime Minister by Amitabh Thakur, then maybe if the Prime Minister reconsiders, then he might be reinstated? Is there a possibility?
I don't think so. I mean, who has the time to look at a letter by a retired IPS officer, and that also in a PMO, which is heavily, covered by the big babus. So these babus, the senior IS officers, will be taking a view from the senior most IAS officers of UP, who will very happily tell them what's the government line, and that letter will be thrown out. So I don't think it will make any difference.
But it's unfortunate that we have a system where not one but many Jasvir Singhs could be in line. How does one prevent this process? How does one stop this process so that not many more Jasvir Singhs arise in the system?
Very difficult, Neelu. If you don't have the functional autonomy for the police, and the police is always under the babus and the politicians, I don't think there is any possibility of here. Somebody should stand up for a good officer. Somebody should stand up. There is only one guy who can stand up. That's the chief secretary. Obviously, he will not stand. The chief secretary is always the political secretary in a way of the chief minister. In fact, the Supreme Court had once said that if we are talking about the fixity of tenure, the DGP needs it more because he has to stand up and stand by the law. But chief secretary, after all, he has to implement the manifesto of the party when it comes into power. So he doesn't have an issue about fixity of tenure. Anybody would be able to perform that. So I don't think this system will change. The politicians like it. If the lawmakers like it, very difficult unless the courts stand up for functional autonomy, or the civil society comes up, or the Jholawala politicians, Jholawala intellectuals do something, or the media comes up and raises a hue and cry. Nobody seems to be interested.
But will this wrong not be corrected if there are police reforms and we don't see the political will for bringing in those kind of police reforms where there's functional autonomy to the police? So which means that this is something very far-fetched. It is something unimaginary in the current context, at least.
Let me give you an example why police reforms will never come, except another 75 years. We are just 75 years behind. The UP government has come out with a recent circular for appointment of DGP to circumvent the Supreme Court directive. And it says that it will be headed by a retired High Court justice. Okay. But retired High Court justice, and who are the members? The chief secretary. Who are the members? A representative of the UP Civil Services Board, a representative of the UPSC, the principal home secretary, and a retired police officer, a chief retired director general of police. Who are these four guys? They'll be IS officers. And the serving two IS officers, they will not listen to the chief minister. So who will prepare the panel? These fellows will prepare the panel. High Court justice will see it when the panel comes. So exactly the same thing will happen. So why do this, all this, subterfuge and things like that? Just say that the CM has the powers, but let the selection of the panel be done by 5 retired IPS officers. Let the 5 retired IPS officers prepare a panel for DGPs. That will be fair. That will be professional. And let that go to the chief minister and let the chief minister decide. That will be simpler. But that will not be done.
Absolutely. It feels sad to hear this, but my last question to you, Mr. Azad, that what is the future of Jasvir Singh now? I'm sure he's going to be frustrated. He's never been happy throughout his tenure, given the fact that he was given a nondescript job even while he was an IPS officer. He stood up to his principles, stood up against the government, and now he has to compulsively retire. In fact, he has retired. So, what is the future of Jasvir Singh or many like Jasvir Singh who are there in the system?
Well, I don't know. My blessings are always with guys like Jasveer, and I do hope he does something very productive in Hoshiarpur. Agriculture is one, and I think he should write. He should spread the word of about administration. He should. There are so many things he can do, and I'm glad that he's gotten out of this system. Though he must appeal against the order and see what the courts have to say. Is that a reason enough to dismiss him? I think that'd be a very, very good grounds to sort of appeal against this order.
Thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful talking to you. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this interview, subscribe to our channel, send us a feedback, and stay tuned to the Federal. Thank you.